My name is Lynn, for those of you meeting me for the first time. We have had this conversation before, well, a little bit different from the previous one we had in December, and we are still looking at we're looking at the plight of Ugandans, especially Ugandan girls working in the Middle East. Today in particular, we are looking at human trafficking and Ugandan girls working in the Middle East. We are looking at a very pertinent issue that continues to bite at our hearts, that continues to, hurt the core of our communities, because these are our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, our nieces, and it's March. We're still celebrating women. And in so doing, we ought to look out for these girls, the ladies, the women trying to make a living out of Uganda, and particularly in the Middle East. And we noticed that many of from Uganda especially are engaged in low-skill jobs like cleaning, driving, serving as porters. Some of them are housemaids, house helps. And so it is such a big problem. Today with us is Sumaya Cry. She's going to join us shortly. Brendah Namale, she's a workers leader, United Arab Emirates. We have Ian Kaijuka. Now, Ian Kaijuka hasn't joined us, but he's going to join us shortly. And he's the managing director, Optimal Manpower Placement Limited. And particularly this gentleman is going to tell us how things, go on. We have Ivan Bwowe. Ivan is a lawyer, researcher in human trafficking. Ivan, we did have a conversation with you previously in December. We also have Miriam as well as Francis. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, while we look at this issue, there have been certain developments with the Ministry of Gender, because this is where most of the manpower placement companies must be registered with the Ministry of Gender. And it seems there's been some developments. However, before we get to those developments, Brendah, if I remember correctly, we had you that day in December, we had a conversation. What have you encountered since then? What has happened since our last conversation? If you have any idea, please do unmute and let us know. What has happened since then?
Good evening, everyone. How have you been, Lynn? Long time.
I'm well, thank you.
Sorry, I came in a bit late, but I think on time for that.
No, you're right on time. Don't worry. You're right on time.
So for the little time that we've spent without having so much to share here, I kind of did a little small research in regards to what is happening here in the Middle East, and I realized a few things that I wish to share today. First, there is something called the kafala system, and in regards to the laborers, especially we were looking at the girls, with the ones we call the kadamas. So with the kafala system, it's different from these other systems. Like for us, we have Ministry of Human Resource, and then there's Ministry of Labor and all that. But this kafala system, it's for the Ministry of Interior. It's under Ministry of Interior, and it's all over in the Middle East. So if you see it it's similar here in the UAE, in Saudi, in Jordan, in Oman. So, but in the setting of it, the workers, they have no protection under the host country, and that is for Ugandans who have come to one of those countries that I've mentioned below. So there is no way that the labor law can protect them. So in so doing, they become highly exploited by their bosses. Let's look at that. And then you realize that their employment and residence visas, they are lying to one another. So it's very hard for there's power imbalancing. You realize that the sponsor is the only one who is entitled to either renew or terminate. So it favors so much. You as an individual who is a worker, you cannot come up and say, I'm leaving the job. You have no say. So you're not protected because it's only one-sided. So there is power imbalance when you look at that employment and employment, work employment and residence visa. At the same time, still under the kafala system, you realize that the sponsor has the permission. The sponsor is you have to ask for permission from the sponsor. In which cases, for example, if you want to transfer the job, if you want to leave the country, if you I don't know how to say, if you choose to end the contract, still you have to seek, and if you don't, you've committed an offense, and that offense is punishable either with deportation, either with imprisonment. So that is one of the things that I try to look out with that kafala system. And when you check under the countries that that are having that similar that kafala system, each country has a different policy in regards to such punishment. Of course, there are some countries, when you look at Jordan, when you look at Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, and Bahrain. Remember last time we talked about we can talk to them, and then they can come up and make, say like unions, and then we open up something, then we can push and push. In those countries that I've mentioned above, such is allowed. But when you look at Qatar, in some cases it's allowed. When you look at Saudi Arabia, and here, unions are not allowed. And then when it comes still under the kafala system, and here I'm looking at how we can kind of help them. In Bahrain, you can do it, but that is after 1 year. With Jordan, with Kuwait. But in Lebanon, you cannot change or quit without the permission of the what? Of the boss. But Qatar, you can. So same in Saudi, in some cases it is, but here still it's not allowed. And then when you look at the other punishment that you get, that is of leaving the country without the sponsors or your boss's approval, in most countries, in all countries it's allowed except in Saudi. And when you look at the cases that we are looking at right now, most of them are under Saudi Arabia. That is why. But here in the UAE, you can move you can leave. The courts will allow you to go back home if you want to leave without even the approval from your boss. So going forward, we, after having analyzed that of the kafala system, I looked back and I related it with the situation that is going on home. I feel that those organizations that are there that are bringing, somehow they might be looking at this kafala system and trying to find the loopholes and all that, and then they are using them so that they go on and do whatever they have to do, whatever they are doing. For example, when you look at the case of this young girl, I think all of us have seen on the news, who was her organ was taken out, the kidney. And then still on that note, I looked out to country in specific was Saudi Arabia, and I discovered that there is actually, what is it called? It is called Tawakalna. It's something like you will realize that the Saudi government, it allows organ transplant. You can donate your organ, like you're allowed as an individual. So what is happening with the setting of the kafala system being in place, and with this one in that specific country, Saudi in case study, not any other country, that is where these companies have been using these two to do whatever they are doing, because what they do is, if the worker is not aware of this tawakalana, something, it's called tawakalana, something like that, about, they would just take the person, sign a document saying that you're willing to donate your organ, okay, without even, but they've booked you for something else. This is not hearsay. This is all over, that Saudi allows organ transplant. So you will go sign, and then your organ is taken out without you knowing. And another thing I realized was the language part, where they might give you something which is in Arabic. Of course, we might be able to speak a little Arabic, but when it comes to written, everything changes. So with that takawala, I think if you do a research on it, you will see it. It's called Tawakalana platform. That one, it's where they allow workers that are being taken unknowingly, and they exploit them, and they end up signing without the approval of themselves. They sign documents, and they end up, their organs end up being taken. Yes, they've been told something else, and then they are taking something else. So with these two in place, that system of allowing people to donate, and this kafala system, the sponsors are using that to exploit these girls and to take their, even I do believe that there are some cases where even those companies back at home may not be aware of this, that they've taken the child or the worker or the girl, they've taken the organ from them. They may not be aware, but because of these two in place, kafala system and that Saudi law that allows organ transplant and offering of the organs, they might use these two, they are basing on these two to take organs from the children. And when you go back still, where I sometimes still feel that those organs, those organizations back home are aware of fully what is happening, because I don't think you can open an organization without knowing this kafala system, how it operates, without knowing that in Saudi there is such a law that allows organ transplant, offering of the organ, taking of the organ, okay, offering of that one. So if they know this, so they exploit these two. That's why most of these girls, they go specifically to specific clinics in Uganda. They do tests, and what is happening is you will find over 50 girls going there, but their target might be only 5. And once they have their 5, they will all go. And the biggest problem that we are having is you will find that there are only 2 or 3 girls or 5 who are complaining about a specific company, and the rest are just praising the company. So this is where everything gets so hard, because the few who are complaining are very few, and most of the time with ministries and all that, we look at statistics, the numbers. So you will realize that the few who are complaining were the targets right back at home when they were doing those transplants, when they are doing those tests. So way forward, we kept saying, even me myself last time, I kept looking at what is it called, the embassies helping out, and calling on the ministries coming up and protecting us. But with this system, the kafala system, when we look at it in the diplomatic way, diplomacy, embassies have protocol and have procedures. This system, it's within those countries. All what we can do, because last time we had said that even us, we can start here mobilizing and all that. It's not allowed. The government here is not allowed. It does not allow us to join hands and then go and join up as, let's say, housemaids and then go to advocate. It's not allowed. when you look at with the system, this kafala system. So the only way is diplomacy, the diplomatic way. We have to handle this in a diplomatic way, where the government of Uganda has to come with the government or the GCC government and see how they can look into this kafala system. How can they change it? There have been proposals, even themselves here or in the Middle East, they know that this system is exploiting the laborers. They know it. And that is how the sponsors have been exploiting because of the system that they say. But nothing has been done. What they do, other countries, they come, they talk to those countries, the Middle East countries, because, for example, the Filipinos are being helped. The Asians are being helped. The Kenyans, I think, are also having some issues, but at least for them, they've already been helped. How? Even when it comes to these other better jobs, Kenyans have better jobs than other East African countries or other. They get that. So it's more the government which has to come in. We as individuals, with this setup, with diplomacy and with protocols that all these like the embassies can do and all that, and it will be very, very hard with these two to come up and with a solution that will be viable to help these girls. Problem is organizations, when you look deep, most of them are government owned. Those we see, they are government owned, or they are from people above, as I said previously. The people you see, the first people you see on the face as this is the owner of this organization, or these that are bringing the girls here in the Middle East, those are first off. But the real owners are deep rooted in. So with such, it's very, very little that we can do, except like having such a conversation and talk and then air it out. And we see if they can listen, if they can help out as we cry out. That is my submission for today. Thank you so much, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brendah, for that. I like that you highlight two key laws that probably are being manipulated here, and meaning our girls or our people end up, being victims of these laws. It's interesting. We have Ivan Bwowe, who is a lawyer. Ivan, before you can look into that, let me see who's here. Yes, Sumaya has joined us. Sumaya, thank you for joining us. And I'm calling upon you to unmute and get to speak. We are looking at human trafficking and Ugandan girls working in the Middle East. Sumaya, what do you have to tell us today?
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? I'm going to be talking on behalf of the training centers and recruitment companies of Uganda that are authorized by the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. So, like previously, I'm one of the people who went to Saudi Arabia. I went in 2014 and came back in 2018. I lasted there for 3 years and I came back, but I went through proper channels. Now, the biggest problem is we have a lot of recruitment companies, and the government has really, I'm not going to say failed, but they've failed to organize them in a proper way. So most of the companies are registered by the government, but they still have bypasses. Like they partially put some girls through the correct laws, then others, they bypass them, they take them through trafficking, because like it's a bit costly for them to transport all these girls through proper channels. So they end up getting some girls to be being trafficked. Another thing, the kind of people we are dealing with here, most of them, the girls we have that are going abroad, majority of them lack knowledge. They really lack knowledge, and most of the girls are desperate for work, being that there is a high, like here in Uganda, there is a high rate of unemployment. So most of the girls are really, really desperate for jobs. And when they hear the sums of money they pay, they can do anything to get that kind of a job. So what I think, it's first of all, we have to make sure that we sensitize, that we really educate these girls of the bad things and the good things of going to Saudi Arabia or to any other country through proper channels, because most of them are still ignorant about which way to take. Whenever they hear someone that I'm taking people abroad, they'll just go on and join. So what I think that has really made human trafficking, like human trafficking is really on a high rate, and what is causing that is the ignorance we have as Ugandans. No one has come up to sensitize the girls, the unemployed youth, on which proper channels to use. So I believe if the government comes in and they start sensitizing these girls and they start talking to them, like, because in Saudi Arabia, they're working for 30,000 a day. I used to work for 30,000 a day. That is 900,000. A girl here in Uganda can make that money. But just because they hear a huge sum of 900, they think it's Saudi Arabia where I can get a life I really desire. And they end up finding a lot of challenges there, of which some lead to loss of their lives. So I really think the biggest thing here is to sensitize girls, to educate them and to make them like patriotic, like to teach them to love their country, because if they really have love for their country, they wouldn't be moving on the rate. Right now we are in training, but per a week we can train up to 1,000 girls going abroad to work. That is a big number. In a month, you can end up having 3,000, 4,000 girls going abroad, which is a really huge number. So, and it's really not proper, because whenever these girls go, we are missing out on resources. Maybe they would have contributed to the growth of the nation, but they're all going abroad. And the other thing is, excuse me. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is, before going to Saudi Arabia, we take them through training. And I want to brief you about the kind of training we give to them. We take them through the employment contract, the rights, their personal rights and the boss's rights. Then we take them through financial literacy, how to manage their finances. Then we take them through mindset. Excuse me. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go on.
Okay.
Go on, Smaya.
Okay, right now we have a new curriculum that was introduced by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, and I'm going to be showing you a copy of it, which is here. Okay, I'll be taking pictures for you. Of this curriculum. It's the new curriculum. It has just been introduced. It was introduced in December. So it's the curriculum we are now following. We used to follow what we used to get as feedback from Saudi Arabia. That is what we used to teach. But the government came up and they sat down and came up with this curriculum. It composes of 9 subjects. 9 subjects. So we are taking them through introduction, 21st century competences, then contract and destination country, then goal setting, mindset and behavior change, and financial literacy, then plus the practical part of it. So that is what we are basically taking them through. And this training has really changed a lot, especially when it comes to mindset. So unless if there is something else you would want to know from me.
Maya, so far since the introduction of these courses and these training sessions and sensitization, how many so far have you trained as the training centers, and how impactful has this training been?
Right now, the training was extended from 7 days because we used previously to teach for 7 days. Now we are teaching for 14 days because the government thought it wasn't right for a girl who is going to spend 2 years in Saudi Arabia to study for only 7 days. Now we are taking them through this training session for 14 days, which is 2 weeks. And according to the new syllabus, most of the teachers are still adopting the new curriculum, but it's really, really helpful. And for the girls we've taught so far, they are really appreciating, and they really appreciate the work that the people who sat down and compiled this came up with, because this is a lot more professional. It has even laws and regulations, the Ugandan government laws that talk about human trafficking, the rights of an employee, a migrant employee. So it is really a huge syllabus, but it's really helpful. And we've seen changes according to the feedback we get from Saudi Arabia. People are really appreciative. And there is one Arab who told us, I wish the first girls were like these ones you're sending us since December, because these ones are not half-baked like we used to previously send them. They're copying, they are like they're motivated to work.
Okay, thank you very much, Sumaya, for that. We have Miriam, we have Francis and Ivan. Ian is trying to join in, so he will join in. He also has, we have a few questions for him as well, but thank you very much so far. I want to ask Ivan. Ivan, we have noted from Brendah that there's a manipulation of the existing laws that, of course, are for those countries. And my question is, why do we export labor to those countries and subject them to the country's laws? I mean, these are migrant workers. Isn't there a difference between migrant workers and the people of that country? Must their laws really affect the migrant workers? That is one. Two, we have laws in place from the Ministry of Gender, from government as well, regarding these migrant workers. Are these laws not working at all? Because recently, the Ugandan government and its counterparts in Saudi Arabia established a technical committee to monitor the well-being of Ugandan migrant workers following, the numerous complaints. The question is, who is doing what, and who is playing around with our minds? And here, Sumaya tells us they're taking girls through training, that should be enough, but still, we don't see much happening. Ivan.
Thank you so much.
Ivan, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I thank you so much. And one, I have to say that when you move to a country, then you have to adopt by their laws. The duty to have laws that protect migrant workers is a shared obligation between the sending state and the receiving state. Every state has its own portion. Now, I want to clearly state that it is not true that whoever goes through the channels not set by the government is trafficked. And it is not true that all of those that go through the channels, the channels set by government, are actually not trafficked. Trafficking happens even in the channels set by government. I also want to clearly state that it does not mean that the laws that our government has set forth are not encouraging human trafficking. In my view, actually, they are encouraging human trafficking. For example, the case of Nachintu, where her kidney was harvested or removed, she went through a licensed company. I have helped quite many get back home when they have gone through licensed companies. Everything legal is legal, but what happens is rather different. So I think, one, we have to appreciate that since 2005, the government has been, in a way, eluding the fact that we need a specific law on labor externalization. The government has decided to hide under the Employment Act, but the Employment Act actually does not even allow us to make the minister to make regulations on labor externalization. And that is the basis. That's the beginning part of where trafficking happens. You'll find to it that, as I noted in the article, that migrant workers are not protected. You will find it that the rules and the guidelines that were shared by our own Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development are different from what the law says on labor externalization. When it comes to statutory instrument number 47, I so happened that recently I shared it because they had refused to share it online. So I decided to actively inform the public about that very law by literally scanning the copy that I had and shared it on my social media networks. So the problem of human trafficking is actually, in my view, facilitated by the state here in Uganda. And what we see about organ harvesting and all that is even bigger, because the recruitment process in itself, in a way, facilitates, as Brendah was saying, facilitates the organ harvesting, whereby girls are targeted easily, where compatibility is known by the comprehensive medical checks that are made. And I'm sorry to say, but this cannot be an issue of training. These are issues about the system that actually does not legally protect them, but also works in a way that enables where they go to quickly do whatsoever they want to do. But I want also to push it a little bit further about how our systems, our laws are actually promoting human trafficking and enabling organ harvesting and all that. It is even worse that today, as I am speaking, Cabinet in November of last year approved the organ donation and tissue transplant bill. That has not been passed into law in Uganda. But to me, it is just going to transfer the process of organ harvesting that has been from taking people here, from here to the Middle East, and then their organs are harvested. The process is going to be made much easier here in Uganda if it becomes law. So you find to it that even then, you find to it that our health system is so vulnerable, corrupt, that even when a Judith, there are issues about complaints about whether her organs are intact, particular clinics and particular hospitals will come to say that all organs are intact, yet they are not. So we cannot blame that at that particular point on Saudi Arabia. We cannot blame that on the training. But we have to look, we have to do an introspective look and say, okay, if our organs were harvested, why did then our hospitals here say that her organs were intact? So that clearly shows you the chain of trafficking. And trafficking, I want to be clear that trafficking does not begin in Saudi Arabia. The chain, the trafficking racket begins here in Uganda. And therefore, if the trafficking chain begins here in Uganda, it is our duty to do our part to break that chain at where it begins from. First, with social, political, and economic solutions, which in part form part of the push factor. And now I'm now speaking economics, but also social sciences. We cannot, and I will argue this again and again, that we cannot, as a state, as the Ugandan state, we cannot in any way delegate the role of the state in providing conditions that will enable employment, creation of employment opportunities to other states. That cannot be delegated. So in all we do, even when it does not seem to be properly understood, the role to create employment, the role to make sure that our businesses thrive here, to create employment for our people, should solely be the responsibility of government of Uganda. And even then, if the government of Uganda cannot handle, as it seems it is failing, then the bare minimum should be to protect its citizens that it facilitates to go out. This is not rocket science, and I've always argued that we are not the first ones to export labor. Philippines has been exporting labor, and surely those who have been to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and those who have had an experience in researching about this, know clearly that you do not treat a Philippines the way you treat a Ugandan in the UAE or Saudi Arabia. That means their governments are doing something extra. It is not Saudi Arabia that is responsible for us having to work on such a sensitive issue that involves life, that we have to deal with it with a lot of deceit and using shortcut methods like the statutory instrument 47 that repealed statutory instrument 62 of 2005. It's my argument that as long as we still have people who look at profit and want shortcut and want to posture as if they are doing something over the issue, but yet in actual sense they are not, we cannot solve the issue of human trafficking. 4, lack of proper legislation only makes it hard for us to combat human trafficking. And we have another law, which is the Prevention Against Trafficking in Persons Act. But even then, it is silent, literally, almost silent on human trafficking that happens within labor externalization. And I've argued that there are no synergies, there are no link between the Prevention to Trafficking in Persons Act and the instrument on labor externalization. That's why the Minister of Gender can suspend a company and accuse it of human trafficking, and yet there is no conviction under the Prevention Against Trafficking in Persons Act of 2009. So, but all that cannot be blamed on Saudi Arabia. No, we cannot blame it on Saudi Arabia. We cannot blame it on the UAE. It is incumbent on our government and our institutions here to sort that mess. Have a specific law on labor externalization. Sort out the institutional gaps that actually are incapable of identifying, preventing, but also prosecuting and protecting migrant workers. So, whereas in most cases we throw it to those governments, their systems, they have the kafala system and whatsoever that goes in there. Here, on things we as a country, Uganda, have control, we have not done even the bare minimum to stop human trafficking. And generally, that is my discussion, and that's my argument. My argument is that human trafficking is more so when it comes to labor externalization, is very dynamic. It keeps on oscillating. It mutates. So when it needs constant vigilance and strict laws if we are to prevent it. But in my assessment, Uganda does not only meet the international standards in combating human trafficking, I don't think it is interested in combating human trafficking. Also when it comes to that is concerned with labor externalization. And I also want, before I take leave of this matter, I want to state that also men are trafficked. Also men are trafficked. And sadly, our systems further again conceal this fact. And most of the stories we've had is that migrant workers were involved in accidents, they've committed suicides. Hell no. They harvest their organs, kill them, and at the end of the day, the only report you have is they were involved in an accident, or they committed suicide. Do we get to get the bodies back? Repatriation of the remains of a person is extremely expensive. So the account of the authorities, the other side, remains the only account of what has happened. And therefore, when you look at the statistics on men and women that commit suicides or die in accidents, actually there are more men. There are more men than women. The difference is the society has taught us that a man should not seek for help. That explains why we have more alarms and calls for help from females than from males. But issues of trafficking and organ harvesting and unexplained death happen for all Ugandans that go to the Middle East in particular. And I have evidence. I've researched on this matter, and I have evidence to show that actually there are very many unexplained deaths that happen there. And usually, even our hospitals here, the government only receives, and as Brendah said, they are just reduced to statistics, which is very unfortunate. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you very much, Ivan. That's very insightful. And, points a finger at, we need to look inside as a government, as a country, and stop blaming other people for our shortcomings. I like that you point that out very well. Laws encourage human trafficking. You mentioned that laws in Uganda encourage human trafficking, and we need to find and come up with lasting solutions. It's going to be a very, very challenging one because, like you said, human trafficking mutates. It's like COVID-19. Every other time we have a new variant on board. Right. Ian has joined us. You forgive me. Ian wants to speak first. So he can work on a few things. But Ian, we're glad to have you. Ian works, he is the director. He is the managing director, Optimal Manpower Placement Limited. Now, Ian, thank you for joining us. Please do let us know how we're talking human trafficking and also the plight of the girls in Middle East, and you are directly involved. Where is the problem? How do we keep having the same conversation over and over and nothing seems to change?
Good afternoon, colleagues. Hope all is well. I'm Ian Kaijuka, and I'm an MD for Optimum Manpower Placement. Now, before we talk about who does what, we need to ask ourselves why. Human trafficking or the need for externalization of labor is as a result of two things. One, there's a push and pull factor. So, there are high unemployment rate and the fact that Uganda is at a unique stage where we are the youngest population in the world with very few opportunities to cater for the young population has led to some of these challenges. Having said that, there are organized ways, even us in companies as labor externalization companies, we face challenges. Why? Because even when potential candidates come to us and they are shown, you tell somebody, to be externalized or to be placed, you will have to go through process X, Y, Z. Many of them, a number of them tell you, you know what, I'll not wait for that. Maybe it's too laborious. It's going to take my time. If anything be above maybe 2-3 months, given the processes that we go through, some people are not willing to wait for that. And this also lands them in the hands of the traffickers. For instance, Uganda as a country does not externalize to Oman. But the question is, how many Ugandans are in Oman? How many domestic workers are in Oman? In the range of about 35,000 or thereabout. The question, how did they get there? Then there must be a route. We have heard all these stories, people going through, and the porous borders through Kenya, through Burundi, through South Sudan, and so on and so forth. Therefore, if we could analyze the problem, and even our government could analyze the problem, what is the issue? The issue is that we have a high unemployment rate. Okay. And then there is need for labor on the other side. Okay. I think the best thing is, how best can we organize this? How quickly can we make the process so that there is no gap? There is nothing that can force anybody to get out of the mainstream organization. So our Ministry of Labor, for instance, as of at the moment, we are facing a challenge of, transitioning from the paperwork to the e-system. That also is a pain. It has taken ages. The system is not working, and nobody explains anything. Those cause delays, and of course, when delays are caused in any system, if we create a clog in any system, then we are simply pushing people to look for options. That's partly the problem. Why don't we streamline our systems? Why doesn't government deploy labor attaches to take care of the interests of our workers? For instance, in Saudi Arabia alone, Uganda has got more than about 20,000 official, but unofficial, they could be much more. The question is, but our embassy has got about 5 employees. Can you imagine 5? How can 5 people who are not even dedicated to labor and issues regarding labor, how can they manage this situation? So you find, workers who may land in distress, having to go to the embassy, then the embassy does not even have the capacity to shelter them. It doesn't even have the capacity to address their issues, and so on and so forth. I liked what Ivan talked about. For instance, a country like the Philippines, well, they have been externalizing a longer time than we have. But the question is, why don't we learn something from them? Why don't we create systems that can better the performance and the welfare and the well-being of our people while at work? Okay. So let's put the blame where it belongs. I'm not saying that the externalization companies are 100%, perfect and so on. Yes, we've got some challenges even within our membership. Okay. But as and when those challenges occur, I think the ministry has done a good job in trying to weed out and trying to address these issues. I want to allay the fears of members. The ministry, with regards to the supervision of companies, it has really, done a good job. Okay, the Ministry of Labor. But of course, as you may know, you take it back to the judicial system. How quickly can convictions be made, for various cases and so on and so forth. So let's look at this. For instance, between 2018, there was a ban of externalization to Saudi. But within that time, statistics show that about 20,000 domestic workers were externalized to just Oman within that period of about 2 years. The question is, were they the companies that did that? Okay. Were they, if there were no official channels, how did these people travel? Okay. But also, there are also the interagency interaction and their duties. The question, the immigration, are they doing their job, at the airport? Are they making sure that, they can enforce or limit trafficking or enforce proper, safe migration? All these, there's an interplay of so many things. Now, there has been an issue of, I think there's one particular case of organ trade or harvesting. And I think, Ivan, you alluded to that. Now, that particular case of that lady, the facts on ground are that she was properly and legally externalized by the company, by the Nile Treasure Gate Company. The documents are there to that effect. Now, she's externalized, and while on duty with her employer, the employer, while they were traveling with the van, the car in which they were, contained 7 people, and they were involved in an accident. Okay? Now, the accident happens, and the employer, on a sad note, loses 2 of his children. This particular lady is taken to intensive care for about more than 390 days, more than a year. Now, if we were to answer to logic, really, is that the best way that, assuming they were meant to harvest her kidney, is that the best way that they could have done it? Would it have to have involved an accident? Would it have to have killed 2 children of the so-called organ harvester, and so on and so forth? Can we learn to look at these things in a more holistic way and get to the detail so that we can understand? Ivan, you spoke about, the unexplained deaths and so on. I don't know, you need to bring up the statistics, and we also understand, is each death, is it explained? If it's not explained, what were the circumstances that led to such a death? I think it is very important that we get to the detail. I'm not saying that everything is 100% okay, but I'm also asking, I put back to you, Lynn, and the entire panel, who takes care of these migrant workers who don't pass through the correct channels? Secondly, the Ministry of Labor, for instance, clears workers, migrant workers, on individual basis. If you went there and you said you have a job, you found an opportunity, they would clear you. The question is, who follows up these people? I think the fact that companies are there and companies take responsibility of at least those that they externalize, that's kudos in itself. But can we also look at streamlining, making things better, making let government also wake up and take up its responsibility, because the sole responsibility of every national out there who is not within this jurisdiction of ours rests upon our government. The question is, what has government done to make sure that it fulfills that obligation? Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Ian, for that insight. Now, Francis, Miriam, and the rest, you have the floor. If you have questions or comments on so far what we've had from Brendah, what we have from Sumaya, what we've had from Ivan and Ian on matters regarding our conversation today. I worry, why is everybody pointing fingers at the government? Yet I thought the government is doing quite well. If we could remember, the employment recruitment of Ugandan migrant workers regulation 2021 statutory instrument was, put in place as of course labor and so the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development tightens its grip on external labor export companies. It seems that there is a problem that either the recruitment companies, the Middle East countries, and ourselves as Ugandans are not looking at. Miriam.
Lynn and the fellow panelists, thank you, Sumaya and Ivan, Ian Kaijuka for the enlightenment, and Ivan Bwowe for the input in this sad topic today, human trafficking and organ trafficking, whatever it is. I think it's more like murder, People who work at, it's like Ugandans are being smuggled out to be sold as scrap spare parts for other human beings, maybe who think they have more value than us. And that's very sad, and everybody should be concerned. We are minimizing the whole thing to exporting workers and looking for jobs, but like Kaijuka hinted on, this is a big problem, and Ivan said rightly that it starts from Uganda and it goes, but it happens that these channels, the employment agencies, happen to be some of the channels and the majority channels that these people use to traffic.
That's as far as placement is concerned. But also, that system only connects each company here to 4 partners on the other side. So, for instance, my company can only deal with 4 partner offices, actually 3 offices and 1 company on the other side. And the rules of engagement are that I must have a Ugandan supervisor based in that office or company. The role of the supervisor is to have a weekly checkup on the migrant worker. Now, when they arrive, first of all, the panelists earlier commented on the issue of that they are not allowed to hold phones. I think that is false. Part of the contract and part of the contract terms are that it is a must for a Ugandan worker to have a phone. It is a must, it's part of the contract, and it's part of the rules of enforcement. So they are meant to have a phone, and if they are, and when they cross onto the other side, they are meant to be provided a local SIM card. In this case, it's a Saudi Arabian SIM card. The purpose of it all is to ensure that there is communication. I can assure you, I have externalized about 620 people, domestic workers, and I can tell you honestly that I am in touch with each and every one of them. I am in touch with each and every one of them. I know on a daily what's happening. Why? In my own company, I have got a team that has is facilitated with a call center that is to address any challenge or even to check up on these workers. On the other side, with my partner offices, I have got four supervisors who are placed in these companies in Saudi, who on a weekly basis have got to report on if there is any challenge. Now, having said that, I don't want us to sit here and pretend that we are dealing in a perfect society, or that all on our side things are perfect. Let us not, send blame and say, those guys. The question is, are we any better? Of course we are not. And the panelists before said, a country that does not even respect, its own citizens. Is ours respecting our own citizens? Maybe not. I think what we need to do is, do we have channels of communication? Do we have channels of addressing any challenges that come around? I believe we have. And if every company ensured that, then we would reduce on the issues of distress and the issues that arise as a result of migrant labor on the other side. Now, finally, you were asking, you were worried that we are placing blame on government. On the other side, as I explained to you, yes, the Ministry of Labor here could be doing a good job. But on the other side, where government is meant to enforce, the welfare of its citizens, I want to tell you that we are not doing much. The government, at least to that extent, is not doing much. We have been promised a couple of times and years, labor attaches. Those have never been placed. We have been promised to expand on the embassy. That has never happened. So the question is, even when challenges happen, okay, we don't have a proper mechanism on the other side to take care of them. But let me also state this. Just recently, as an association of labor recruitment and externalization agencies, we came up after out of this crisis, we have gone even a step further to engage and have a team on ground, what we call the monitoring team, where in Saudi, and being sponsored by local Ugandan companies. And what is their purpose? Please, can you make sure that
okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Francis, there you are. You've heard from everybody so far, and I think it's prudent that we hear what you have to say. There's an issue of labor attaches. It's been going on, and as I read here in the latest developments from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, they're still insisting they're going to have labor attaches, in these countries. Do you think it's a very viable option? Is it going to change anything at all? Francis?
Oh, thank you, Lynn, and fellow panelists. I've always said this platform is good for engagement and forging a way forward on all aspects that are affecting our people. To begin with what Lynn has asked, whether the attaches will solve the problem, I would say no and yes. Yes, because we know that embassies are underserved, and the people who face these challenges abroad at least need to know where they can run to. It is a no, it will not solve any problem, because the political will back home is ill, and whoever it will send, it will be an opportunity for them to eat, not to solve the problem. So that's why I highly doubt. And given the corruption, these attaches, they may not send a person who is competent to do the job, but a person who belongs to a certain class and who has the privilege of accessing power. Having said that, then I come to my main presentation or discussion. whether we are discussing, whether it is Ian, whether it is Ivan, Lynn, and all of us and all Ugandans, and those who are in the different ministries or in ministries, we should know that what we are talking about is life of human beings, life of mothers, life of fathers, life of children, life of parents who gave birth to these people that are being trafficked, or these people that are being exported for labor. And we should know the chain of the grief, the chain of how many people will be affected physically, psychologically, emotionally. And in the long run, the effect it will have on government if we are to build a sustainable society, a sustainable Uganda, a Uganda that works for everyone. Now, having said that, on several occasions, and it is a fact, most of the companies that export labor, the reason to why they don't mind, most of them, when you go to trace the connection to a powerful person in government. And to me, that convinces me that human trafficking or the reluctance in putting stringent measures to curb this vice is like upgrading into a cartel. And that is something that we should check. And that's why, Lynn, we will keep condemning government that this is a systematic and structural failure in terms of government structures are concerned. So, because of that, that's why we say the only way we can first deal with it is to first have a government that has a structure, that has a system that is functional, but also a system that is based on critical information. Let me give you an example. If you go and look at the Employment Act, you look at the Employment Recruitment Migrant Workers Regulation 2005. Then you come and look at the amendment that they did to 2021. You will see that what they are doing are just superficial kind of addressing symptoms, not the disease itself. And for me, that's where I have a problem. And I have always argued that there is nothing for us without us. There is nothing in as far as these laws that you can come up with and come up with a concrete solution without, for example, involving Brendah, who has unleashed all this information that look here, the labor laws itself, what is taking place in Saudi Arabia. Much as Ian was saying that if we are blaming Saudi Arabia, is Uganda also different? If we can go by history, Mr. Ian, Saudi Arabia or the Arabs participated in slave trade. Can you show me the remnants of black people in Saudi Arabia? That is one. Two, go and study slave trade even in North Africa currently, where the Arabs are predominant. It is their culture. And when it comes to torturing physically, abuse, and all sorts of things, they will do damage, generally massively. That one, I don't also disaggregate that either me as a Ugandan, as Francis, I also don't have my own flaws in terms when it comes to if I'm going to work and so on and so forth. But at the moment, we are talking about a life of a human being and so on. So when we are discussing some of these things, Ian, it's not that we are saying Uganda is good, but we are saying how best at the back of the person you are exporting outside for labor. I'm glad for you, at least you have put mechanism as your company. Thank you very much. And that was one of the things I was going to suggest as a way forward anyway. So let the government come out and be held accountable. For example, I would ask myself, it would be that once Ian, your company, says I'm going to export person XYZ, then that list should be served with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The same list should also appear to the embassies, because for you at least you know where the people are going. And we first fight for the welfare of those that we know that have gone through proper channels. Then we begin cracking down on those that go through improper channels. I do agree with what Zawed had said. Massive awareness. For example, can Zawed go on TV and give her experience that, look here, you don't need to go outside, or the company now that she's working for would fire her? So I need those facts to come out. Tell the people the truth. But would Zawed do that? If she can do that, then don't go and train them behind the curtains. Go on TV shows and train them openly and tell them what they are heading. I would agree with Brendah. Brendah, in the current amendment that they made 2021, instead of addressing that, okay, the company, like Ian's company that is taking you out, should be in position to pay for whatever, for all your bills. But they say the employer, and in this time, it is the Arab somewhere who is going to put you in his house. And that's where the problem begins. Once you reach there, we have had statements of saying, I bought you, I paid for you. And then they are treating them as their property. So once you have your goat, you can decide that if I want to eat the liver, I can take it to a slaughtering house, slaughter, pull out the liver. And so, to me, I think that is what should be addressed. At parliamentary level, I'm sorry to say so. It seems even when they are making these amendments, they are making them from an ignorant point of view, which should be addressed. And I have seen on several cases I can quote, even Brendah quoted it. For example, we went to South Sudan and fought a war as Uganda. But look, the businesses that are lucrative, like banking, name them, went to Kenya. Meaning that for us, our government doesn't have a plan for the end game. We just go to some place aimlessly. When the government of Ethiopia banned the exportation of labor to Saudi Arabia, then Uganda jumped in blindly without studying why did these people stop this and what do we need to do. Like for me, if there were these lists and we know like the bilateral agreements, we don't know even what is there. Are these lists handed over to Minister of Labor back in Saudi Arabia or in UAE or in whatever country we are agreeing with? And then from there, all those where we are saying we don't have bilateral agreements, but we know 20,000 Ugandans are there, they are suffering. What attempts have been made? But I have seen Uganda, it doesn't care about its people. Take an example of the Ukraine, where other countries were struggling to go and get out their people. Like Uganda doesn't care. They took themselves there and so on. I wish on this particular debate, if the ambassador of UAE again was here, because he keeps defending the indefendable. I think, Lynn, if you had brought him here and he listens to what Ian is saying, of course, Ian is raising critical issues to do with government. Brendah rose the same. Ivan rose the same. So, which means that if we don't keep talking these things clearly and establishing systems, then we would be in big trouble. Then, as I conclude, this is how, for me, I look at it. One, I need that every time our governments are making adjustments in these laws, they go and make thorough study, not sitting and assuming. And then they get people who have lived or who have lived the experience in Saudi Arabia. And of course, establishing how can we also ensure that jobs are created. In other words, if Ian, I think it was Zawed who said that people go out because of unemployment. That is lack of planning. The government has failed completely to plan for its people. Then two, ratifying of international labor laws. And they should also make research. If a country has not ratified some of these international labor laws, then let's ban the exportation, and it should be clear. Then three, we should be in position to find out some of these countries, do they have trade unions? Do they have, and so on, where our people can go, as Brendah was saying. Then let's also ensure that the labor lists, let the government, for example, the government, instead of saying that, you had the other time an ambassador was saying that when I come and reach in a given country, I should go and register with the embassy. Why can't the immigration list that Francis was flying out, he said he's going to this country, provide these lists to these governments? In your country, we have this such and such a number of people. Like, let's take an example of the US government. It knows even wherever its people are. I will give an example. Miriam, you must recall this. When one of the boys shoplifted something from a shop in China, the president was involved. They are jailing the boy in China. The government of America is saying, no, this guy cannot be charged in foreign laws. He has to come back to America. We shall deal with him. It became news. For me, I thought he was the son of a minister somewhere. He was just a common person, But you can see such a kind, you just know that the country is there to protect its people regardless of other different odds. Then the bilateral agreements, I have talked about them. Then engagement. These engagements should be constant. I like Ian for sure for coming, because we know your organizations or recruiting agencies have flaws and so on. But when you come out and also acknowledge some of these things, I agree with you, and let's keep engaging, and you streamline your job. We need people to go out and get jobs, but again, at the same time, we want their welfare to be taken care of. And also, I don't know whether, Ian, you normally engage government, and at what level you engage it, or from a compromised point of view, or from a view of giving in your input. For example, when they were amending the 2021 recruitment regulation, were you part of it? Were you involved? If not, then that's why they end up crafting laws like what they are crafting. Because how we had, once some of the prominent doctors in Uganda and government officials were somehow, somewhere named amongst the racket that is involved in human body parts extraction, then that's when a law came now in Uganda. And that is a law that is not well thought of, that we can donate. And then at the end of the day, we are going again to fall victims of that craft law, like as how Ivan was saying. The issue is within the laws, and then I also agree engaging the public, but of course that comes with the structure of government, the will of government to say that we can solve some of these critical and fundamental problems. Otherwise, the rate at which human trafficking is taking place in Uganda is alarming. Thank you.
Maybe Lynn is
right.
present.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Francis, for that input. While you organize your questions or comment as we wind up, let me take a look at what's in the chat room. Mr. Ian should take it as agency. I beg your pardon. This is Brendah writing, and she says, Mr. Ian, should we take it as agencies are fully accountable for what's going on, because there's no constant communication with the workers they have sent to Brendah, what is GCC? I hope you can clarify on that. Exactly. It has turned into a cartel because they are protected by the government. And earlier on, Brendah had said that very true, the boy child is neglected so much here. I wish we could also have a conversation on what happens with the guys, the males that are taken for, do they so encounter such issues, you know? Miriam says, actually, the employers sell the workers on social media applications to other employers as if they are chicken in a market stall. Miriam, that's very, very serious. We should get those details someday. The biggest challenge is that the employment agencies are owned by big people in government. No wonder they cannot set up the mechanisms to protect the workers. Ian, I don't know if you would agree with that. I don't know. Brendah goes on to say no statistics at all, which is so bad. Bravo, Mr. Francis, great submission. Sumaya says there's a provision of labor laws, but they cannot be put in action. Now, if Sumaya, who is working with under the Ministry of Gender, says there are laws, but they're not being implemented, what are we supposed to do? Ladies and gentlemen, Ian, I don't know if you're back with us, but if you were, you could answer a few things, but let's move. I think he's off for now. Let's move. Any reactions to what so far we have had? Who is that? Who is that? Yes, Ian.
That is Sumaya.
Oh, Sumaya, we need to mute.
No, she can respond.
Okay, go on, please. If you have anything, go on. Oh, no. Okay, so, okay. So please, let's move on. We've heard from these, from people, but do you think with these laws in place, really? Because so far there's a new law in place, and like I started off, I told you that the ministry has actually put in place certain committees between their intergovernmental committees. They've put in place committees to look into these issues. So there are intergovernmental committees between Uganda and Saudi Arabia, and they're starting up there. They keep saying we're giving you labor attaches, but is this really the way forward? First of all, Ian has told us that we need to look into us. Ivan already said that it is it's a big problem that keeps mutating. Brendah seems to think it has turned into a cartel. So what's the use of us having these conversations if we are not going to see any changes happen? And if so, what can we work on to, as we wind up, what solutions can we suggest?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Francis, for the engagement. You asked a pertinent question. Are you speaking to government, and how often do you speak? For instance, in the amendment of the current law and the upcoming regulations, our association, companies and our association submitted 47 recommendations. And I want to tell you that none of those recommendations were looked into or put into consideration. And when you talk about an issue and you don't take care of stakeholder engagement, I think that's where we lose the point. We have a challenge where the technocrats think that they know what the problem is and therefore the solutions to the problem. And a couple of times, it's not just about this sector of externalization of labor. We have seen this across the board, where government programs are set out and then they fail. When you look at the scorecard, it's normally low. The question is what happened? I think the take home from this is that we need to learn to, first of all, listen to each other and also engage as much as possible the stakeholders. And who are these? The companies. We have a big force of Ugandans who have got first-hand experience from externalization of labor. Have we tapped into their experiences? Have we listened to them? Have we sought their guidance so that we can come up with a robust, method of monitoring and so on and so forth. So I think there is a bit of a mismatch, but not all hope is lost. For instance, we are at a stage where the ministry now says maybe there is need to look into amendments of already an amended law and stuff like that. Because, for instance, if I could give you this, part of the guidelines are saying you externalization company, you must externalize somebody within 30 days from the period of training, from the end of training. And when you look at the statistic, when you look at the time frame and the processes involved therein, it's totally impractical. So we have met the bureaucrats, we have met the politicians, we have met the minister, the line minister, the minister of state. Recently on Wednesday, we were with them. We met the minister of state for labor, and he was speaking to us at the closure of our retreat. As an association, we retreated and were, having an in-depth analysis of all this, of the entire value chain of externalization of labor. Let's not lose hope. Can we look at closing the gaps wherever they may be? Can we also amplify the success stories? We have a challenge. Well, it's a human nature. It's by human nature. When people are okay, they will not say anything. When an issue arises, it will be spread across the globe. The question is, do we want to imagine that there are no huge numbers of Ugandans who are benefiting from externalization of labor? I think so. I really think so. They are there. But can we amplify their stories? Doesn't any of us know somebody who has externalized their labor and have got a source of livelihood as a result of that? Don't we all know of somebody who has externalized their labor and never found any challenge in the course of their work? Or if the challenge
we're winding up.
Yes, thank you very much. But that's my take. The take home, which I encourage all of us. Okay, let us work in a proactive way. Let us close the gaps wherever they are, and let us place the blame squarely where it belongs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that. I see Miriam here saying, as agencies, what do you think about the agency being responsible for paying the transport for the workers instead of the employers who are largely unknown? Miriam, as we wind up, you have the floor. I don't know, Brendah, anything you have to add? Brendah and Sumaya. Ivan, I don't know. Ivan, are you still with us? I think he left or something. We are winding up. I'm giving each one a minute to give a conclusive remark on our conversation today. I'll start with you, Brendah.
I would like to thank each one who has been able to participate. And my remarks as we wind up would be, I would go with what Francis suggested, that let the board and the owners of the recruitment agencies be published, so that we know, and it will be very easy for us to find a solution, knowing whom we are targeting, whom we are dealing with. And then they should also involve some of the people, for example, those who have worked, like Sumaya has an experience in Saudi, as she stated in her presentation. They should involve such people while doing these amendments of like the one that they recently made in 2021. They should involve them because they've been on ground and they know. And as they've talked about attendees, attaches, you call them the ones who will be on the ground looking out for these girls and workers. They should basically look at the people who have lived there, who know the language, who know, rather than the way they are doing it, like Francis presented, like they are hiring, or they are sending in people who have zero knowledge, who just go there just to get the comfort and and just to make the money. But they should look at people who have been there, who have had experience, and who know the ins and the corners and all the rounds of a given country. And to top it up, for the crying out to the embassies and all that, when you look at the the diplomatic ties and how they do their things, I myself have told you in the previous presentation we had, the embassies will not help. Embassies follow protocol. So me, I would still stick back to the government, and also thanking Ian, so that they themselves as the agencies should take it upon themselves to follow up the girls, know where they are and check on them. Even if it's a weekly basis thing that they do, they should hire someone who contacts each and every girl to find out the condition that they are in. Meanwhile, as we wait on the solution that seems not coming through from the government. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brendah. Sumaya, you have a minute as we wind up. What are your concluding remarks on this conversation?
Thank you so much. So what I want to end up with is, I would suggest that we really emphasize informing these girls on what is really right and wrong when they're still here in Uganda. That there is a provision on laws, on labor laws, but they do not, like domestic service workers are not going to be under these laws. So what we really use for domestic service workers is the employment contract, which is also not fair for domestic service workers. Usually, domestic service workers, what can I term it? They're vulnerable, and there is no one who can help them. It's always God who is there to protect them. They cannot go to Saudi laws to make a complaint. In the contract, they show us that the domestic service worker and the employer should sit amicably and solve issues between them. Now, what if the issue is too big for a domestic service worker? How will she manage to solve it with the employer who is really violating her rights? So I think there should be provisions of labor laws concerning domestic service workers as well, because we hear these complaints, especially from domestic service workers, and they're the most vulnerable people we have abroad. So my concern is they should improve on the labor laws and how they tell Arabs we are, because Arabs think we do not get sick. When you fall sick, they'll ask you, you went through all the medical examinations, and they showed us you're not supposed to get sick. You're here to work, not to fall sick. You understand? So they really do not think we are humans, maybe depending on what they've been told here. And the other thing, when we are teaching them as well, we also include that thing that you have to get used to the Arabs. That's how they are. I think we should also be considerate of their rights, the girls' rights as well. And that was we came up to that from the ministry. So the ministry itself recognizes that maybe Ugandans do not have equal rights as other employees. So I think they should sit and reconsider the rights of domestic service workers. That's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Smile, for that great input. Actually, raise an important point that it's the workers who are given like exorbitant power over it's the employers, I mean, who are given like all the power over the worker, and the workers' rights and life is hardly considered. I've even looked at the copy of the agreement you shared with us, and there is nothing like really to emphasize the right of a worker once she's out of Uganda. Who is going to determine that today this is sickness, like you said, and Francis hit on? These Arabs are racist, and they don't consider Africans as people who deserve rights as much as any other human being. So it's upon us, it's upon our government to fight for the rights of Ugandans and the Ugandan workers abroad. And there is a weak link in between there. You know, the embassies are the ones supported to protect anybody, even if the workers have left Uganda illegally or they didn't follow the right channels once they are in Saudi Arabia or any other country in the Middle East or whatever they're working. That it's the role of the embassy to protect the citizens of your country wherever they are. And you don't need it's your right as a citizen for the embassy to protect you. You don't need to be either in the proper channels or not. Even if you are a criminal, it's still your right to be protected. And I think when you're training workers, Ms. Sumaya, you should emphasize that whatever happens, they should know how to demand for their rights. They should know how to advocate for themselves. You don't have to die because you have a 2-year contract which you must pay your worker or whatever before you get out. They should run for their life if need be. They should be protected, and at that point they are vulnerable. The government should protect them and the agencies should protect them. Once someone says, oh, this is too hot, I can't stand this kitchen, I mean, the worker has a right to say no to some limit, something. And that when they are being trained and the laws are put in place, that should be emphasized. If you think you are taking a worker who is going to be so weak, like they can't stand the employment conditions and whatever, don't take them. If you feel you're gonna make losses by sending them and then your expenses are not met because they didn't work for 2 years, make them pay before they go so that they are responsible for their money too. So those things, I think, are some things which can be put in place, and saving lives should be a priority, not making money. But so far, I'd like to appreciate Smaya, Ivan, Brenda, and Francis, and Lynn, all you panelists for coming out to share with us. I'm sure we don't have to be hopeless. I mean, even if we speak between us and create awareness, the show is aired, someone is going to listen, that's creating awareness. And we should emphasize, like Ms. Sumaya said, people should go out there when that's like the last resort, because things are not good and some of the things are out of control. For instance, you are not going to teach an Arab not to be a racist by so many laws you put in place. If they are racist all the way. And if the Saudi Arabia government doesn't respect the rights of human beings, whether they are foreigners or their own people, there is nothing you can do about it. And you are better staying in Uganda or go to another country which can protect your life more than risking your life and your future by taking that journey to the unknown. Otherwise, right. I would like to say thank you all, and back to you, Lynn.
Right, thank you very much, Miriam. I see Brenda. Brenda, you have 1 minute. Okay, she says, I wish to say something about the embassy, if time allows. Brenda, please go on, just 1 minute.
Okay. Why I asked for this 1 minute is, 1 minute about the embassies is, when you go to the embassy, they will tell you, we follow protocol. And among the protocol, they look at the kafala system, which I explained initially in my past presentation. And what does it say? If you need any help, they will follow what the government of that country where you're working says. What does the system of kafala say? As I elaborated down, those who are already on, what they say is what path they follow. So there is not much. This is where I call upon Lynn and Miriam. If possible, you can call the different ambassadors in the different GCC. GCC is the Gulf countries, Gulf region countries. You asked me about it, Lynn. So the GCC is a summary of those Gulf Arab countries. So they will look at the kafala system. What it says as per each country, like I told you, there are countries that allow having unions, like the ones that Mr. Francis was talking about. Okay? Countries like Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, those allow such unions to be there. But there are countries like Saudi, which does not, UAE, which does not. So such is how the embassies are going to help. They will follow the protocol. What does it say? They follow the kafala system. So as much as the embassy is supposed to do its role to protect the Ugandans in the GCC countries, it cannot fully do that. That is why I call upon us to invite these ambassadors and in the different GCC to elaborate more, because when you go there, they say, madam, we are following protocol. That is it. So they need to, as we, yes, that is that is what I wanted to submit on regards to embassies.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. I see Francis's hand is up. Francis, okay, within a minute, please.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. What I wanted to say as I conclude that, one, we request the government to address the systemic and structural reforms that are comprehensive. Two, we need government to engage, most especially these victims, with the intent to make reforms, as well as listening to these agencies. Number three, we want the curriculum that Medina was talking about also involve the nasty experiences that people are facing. Show them that once you go to these countries, sometimes this happens, so that they get to know, not to show them that everything is rosy. Number four, let our government study the labor laws of the host countries, so that if they are signing bilateral agreements, they know what they are signing. And then lastly, as we have always said, the government should give us a good story to share and market Uganda. Otherwise, we are going to begin organizing demonstrations that will end up shaming Uganda and the host countries in as far as the extraction and mistreatment of our labor that is exported. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Francis. Thank you, everybody that has taken part, and let us all take it upon ourselves that we can make a difference by the more conversations we hold, the more activism we carry out in regard to these issues, the better for our societies. I thank you very much and wish you the very best of the weekend. We'll catch you again next time on Civic Space TV. My name is Lynn. I wish you the very best.